Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by World Anvil. Alright, so I covered Warner Bros. Discovery in a video about 3 weeks ago, but so much has happened since then, and not all of it is bad news for the studio. House of the Dragon, which I do plan on covering later in the season, premiered to huge numbers and generally positive reviews. Now, of course, how that show will be received in the long term is very much still up in the air, but this week I really wanted to hone in on DC specifically, because the past few days have seen a pretty major resetting of their schedule, as well as, and I'm gonna be honest, this is the real reason I wanted to make this video, the likely cancellation of my most anticipated DC project, the Caped Crusader. So with all that being said, let's get into these moves and what they mean for the future. I also want to say up front that this one might be a little shorter than usual because I'm feeling really crappy and under the weather, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity to talk some Batman.
I've got to win this race, but I can't just leave him there. Quick, get out!
Before I get to Caped Crusader though, let's talk about those big DC delays. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom and Shazam Fury of the Gods were both pushed back significantly, with Shazam now being released in 2023 and Aquaman opening in December of that year instead of March. I can't say much about Aquaman, but the Shazam delay actually does make a lot of sense to me. David F. Sandberg, the film's director, had this to say about it. Quote, "While I'm an impatient bastard who wants people to see it as soon as possible, the film will be fully done in just a few weeks. The move makes sense, since Avatar was taking all the IMAX/PLF screens. Fury of the Gods is a big movie and should be seen big. And hey, it's still 3 months earlier than our first release date. So while the fact that this movie has shifted release dates 3 times now probably shows just how chaotic everything is over at the studio, it doesn't seem to be a cause for alarm when it comes to the film itself. In my last DC/WB centric video, I talked about how the company is now saying they want a Kevin Feige of their own, a producer that can oversee a more cohesive take on the DC universe. And according to The Hollywood Reporter, they quickly moved to find that person. Dan Lin, a producer best known for shepherding movies like The Lego Movie, The Lego Batman Movie, both It films, the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies, and of course the 2 most recent American Godzilla films. So clearly he's had a lot of experience, and I don't hold anything against him. But like I said in my last video on this topic, I just really hope this doesn't completely do away with DC taking huge chances with tone. The fact that the Batman, Shazam, and Joker can be so completely different is a huge part of the appeal for me. I might go so far as to say it's the defining thing that sets them apart from Marvel. I hope Lin recognizes that, and is able to find some sort of middle ground. Oh, and let's not forget The Flash. I have no idea how fast these kind of executive deals fall into place, and if the Flash movie will be one of the first things on his plate, but if it is, I really don't envy the guy. It seems like so much of DC's slate, from Batgirl to Aquaman 2, was at one time building on what they established in this Flash movie, and now they seem to be making a very fast retreat from all of that, with Ben Affleck being rumored to replace the time-traveling Michael Keaton in Aquaman. While they still have an out-and-out cancelled Flash, something that does seem more possible now more than ever, if they do want to make a big release of it, I'm just not sure how they'd go about doing that at this point. But okay, everything I've talked about so far I wouldn't really classify as wholly good or bad news. Interesting and worth talking about, but I'm not like passionately upset that I'll have to wait a little longer for Aquaman 2, or that there will be a new executive in charge. The news about the Caped Crusader though, that's a different story. So this was announced alongside a big slate of abandoned animated projects. And I gotta say, the sudden cancellation of this one really caught me off guard. For those who don't know, the Caped Crusader was to be Batman the Animated Series showrunner Bruce Timm's return to Batman. For me, and I know so many others, Kevin Conroy's animated version is kind of the definitive adaptation. So having that creative team back on board, working on a new series aimed at a more mature audience, felt like an amazing fit. Caped Crusader seemed like it was going to be this moody, 30s inspired take on the character, with a budget that would allow them to lean into those things more than the original could, which I personally loved the sound of. Now, as far as animated shows go, I'm sure this was going to be a fairly expensive one. And I know HBO Max is all about brutally cutting costs these days, but at the same time, it's like, this is Batman we're talking about here. Batman, especially in an extension of the animated series version, seems like a pretty sure bet as far as these things go. That's why it getting a straight to series order last year felt like a no-brainer. But apparently, Warner Brothers disagreed. So I'm a little bitter about it, but not all hope is lost, at least not yet, as it's reported that the show will be shopped around to some other places. Obviously anything could happen, and there could be a ton of reasons why other streamers and networks wouldn't want to touch the show, but at the end of the day, and I know I keep coming back to this is Batman we're talking about here. A character who is so popular, a prequel show about his butler has managed to run for 4 seasons, which is completely separate from the prequel show about his cop buddies, which ran for 5 seasons. People really like Batman, is my point, and I feel like someone out there should be willing to take a chance on this show. Off the top of my head, I'd have to say that Amazon Prime seems like a good fit. Between Invincible, The Boys, and The Boys spin-offs, it's clear that they're going all in on superheroes. A great Batman animated series feels like it would be a really good fit there, and I'm sure the Venn diagram of people who watch The Boys and people who have some fondness for Batman would work out in their favor. If it wasn't for the fairly recent Disney ownership, I'd also say that FX would be an interesting fit, but these days that seems pretty unlikely. I don't care who actually picks it up, so Prime, FX, Stars, QVC, someone just release this thing, please. It would be pretty funny if it managed to be a huge hit somewhere else. The last 10 to 15 years or so for DC has been very weird when it comes to film and television. They've had some unambiguous successes on both the big and small screens. Like the prospect of an Oscar-winning Joker movie that made over $1 billion would have sounded pretty unlikely in 2010, but it exists. But there's also something they've never really been able to shake either. This idea that they should be dominating entertainment the way that the MCU was a few years ago. But at least to me, it feels far, far too late to just copy the MCU formula and call it a day. It's not 2010 anymore, and what was once new, exciting, and novel now feels like old news. I hope wherever they decide to take these characters, it isn't some blatant attempt to copy the Marvel tone and style. DC movies and shows have always had their major faults, but they tried so many different odd things. So I really hope getting rid of the Caped Crusader, among so many others, isn't signaling a turn towards just being Marvel light.
Zuko's mine!
Sorry, Robin, but on this team, I call the shots.
But I've waited half my life!
Batman out.
As fun as it is to discuss the world of DC, designing your own can be a lot more rewarding. Take World Anvil. This is an incredible resource for writers crafting massive worlds, especially for role-playing games. I especially want to highlight their feature Whiteboard, which offers the perfect canvas for writers and artists, allowing you to organize everything cleanly and making it easy to connect the story threads how you see fit, with text articles, art pieces, and your own elements. Whether you're planning a creative D&D campaign or just trying to capture the texture and tone of your novel, World Anvil is useful for anyone with a big story idea who wants to see it executed. And if you're writing genre stuff, it's especially amazing, as it makes it super easy to create magic systems, family trees, and get across the tone that your story will require. So head to that link in the description and use code MIDNIGHT to get 40% off an annual membership.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.